Hey everybody, welcome to Served. I am Andy. We are brought to you by the good folks at Chase. Man, US Open is a big event. I thought it was a big event when myself and our friend of the show, Kim Clijsters, who is going to join us for this recap show, to everyone's delight. They always love hearing what she has to say. But Kim, you've been on site. This thing is just a monster now. It's like as much of an event as it is a tennis tournament.
Right. And when I was playing tennis, I don't know if you thought about that there was this whole other compartment to the US Open. I never thought about any of this. And so to be a part of, even the on-site stuff, right? The clinics that you get to do and the suite appearances and the craziness. I think I've seen more celebrities in these last 2 weeks than I've ever seen in my whole life. Like it's incredible how much goes on, and I've missed a few days here and there too. So crazy 2 weeks. Yeah, really cool.
You're right. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they passed 1 million fans for the first. I mean, there are baseball teams in Major League Baseball that don't do 1 million fans through the gate in an entire season. Right. I won't name names, Oakland Athletics, but there are some teams that drift around that 800 that for 80 some odd home games. They have made it into a 3-week event with Fan Week, 240,000 through the gates for Fan Week for qualifying, and a couple of exos, which for the most part are free, which is great. So props to the USTA and everyone who has made this into as much of a spectacle as it is a tennis tournament, but the tennis tournament obviously is the heartbeat of it.
And you think it can improve every year, but it's been improving every year, and that's the great part about it. So fun to be a part of. The
other fun parts, and I think the thing I want to do next week, and we're trying to put it together. Hopefully we can pull it off. Is like a business of the US Open. So all the things that you're talking about, like so having different guests where their job is, to run corporate hospitality for massive companies, right? Massive companies choose for this to be their biggest annual corporate offering. And that's kind of what makes it tick. And even the little details of the US Open where you're going around the grounds and there's music and like the food 20 years ago was a dumpster fire. And that might be offensive to dumpster fires. And now it's like, I mean, you can get like Morimoto sushi. I mean, it's just a different.
Even in the players area, I feel like the food. I always thought the U.S. Open maybe was my least favorite when it came down to food and maybe the quality of it. And now, just seeing the buffet and the options that you have,
crazy.
It's definitely big improvements.
The players area is like a machine. You showed me that. I mean, it was like...
Yeah, you were there on day one.
It was like a packed mall in the 90s. It was nuts.
It's like a train station.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was cool.
Well, there was some tennis too that we want to get... former U.S. Open champion. Hey, one thing I want you to talk about off the top, which Kim and I only saw each other for a quick hug and a quick conversation. I think we were like trains passing in the night.
The last day, right?
Yeah, for most of the U.S. Open. But I was doing a suite visit with Tracy Austin where we walk in and we say hello, we talk about the matches, do some pictures, and she's like my work wife for a week. But there are monitors in all the suites, right? And so all of a sudden, the women's final's about to start. And then I see Kim and Jada walk out. So like one of my favorite pictures of all time and everyone's favorite picture of all time. Very iconic photo. And let me know what details of this I get wrong, Kim. But it's basically Kim wins the US Open, again. And I think Jada saw herself on the big screen and you're kneeling down next to her kind of on her level and you're both looking up at the screen, but you have the trophy. And it was this like perfect moment of accomplishment on grand scale, but also like a child's focus is look at him on the screen. Like it kind of connected the two versions of life. Anyways, what happens? When did you know that you were going to do the coin toss? Walk us through that process. Because I looked up and I'm getting chills right now talking about it just because it was cool for me to see as a friend and also someone who's a fan of the sport.
Literally Saturday morning.
The morning of the final.
Yes, like Eric Buderek I got a text message from him like, "Hey, I know it's been 15 years this year that you won your title as a mom in 2009. Would you be willing to do the coin toss with Jada?" And I was like, "Oh, obviously with all the things happening that day, like, let me reach out to Jada if she's even willing to do it, because she's usually like a little bit like, no, I don't want to do any of this." So kind of told her like, "Hey, like I heard Steph Curry's gonna be there. I heard so and so." So she doesn't follow tennis too much. She's a huge Coco Gauff fan. Like anything Coco Gauff, basically off court, even more than the stuff that she does on the court, is what she really, really likes. But yeah, so I was able to get a hold of her. She was still in bed, and she was like, "Okay, Mom, I'll do it, but I'm kind of nervous. Like, what should I wear?" And she started sending me like outfits and whatever. And so she's now 16, and it was nice to share that moment with her, and it's a fun memory together.
And it's strange because like before, like even during player walkout, the stadium seems extremely distracted, right? Everyone's doing their own thing. Everyone's trying to set up their food. Everyone's having a conversation, trying to find their seats. Like there's a lot of moving parts. Even through the first like 3 or 5 games of a match, I feel like people are kind of trying to find their groove. But I think people instantly got the connection when they saw the photo and then the two of you walked out. There was like this moment of appreciation. And those don't always land. Like you can have a script and a good story, and you just hope that people are actually paying attention to the coin toss, right? But from where I was watching, and I kind of stopped I was probably unprofessional. I stopped everything I was doing to watch it and made a room full of people watch it.
But I was already like drying my tears, like waiting for the players to come out. No, when Jessie got announced on court, it was so loud, and I got chills, and I had to I was like wiping my tears before I had to go out there. Like I don't know, it's been so long since I was in like a moment like that, and it just really overwhelmed me, like hearing the crowd supporting Jessie as an American, as a New York, like born in New York, and it was really, really loud. And Jada too, she was like, "Mom, this is crazy. Like I can't believe a tennis player has to be out on court by themselves. Like at least when I play basketball, I can share this with my team, and we can laugh, and we can kind of joke and fire each other up, but it's just you out there." And so it was very, very cool to be able to be.
It's a good segue. I think we later on in the show, we have our show notes of like talking points for when you leave us after the show. And that's kind of one of them, like the isolated existence of a tennis player out there, specifically like we were going to reference it with Jack Draper and what happened with him. But it's so true. When you did it and then you left, does she obviously understands like that moment, picture, photo. Is her association like it just doesn't exist in real life until the U.S. Open comes around, or is it cool for her, or is it weird for her, or is it all of that?
Yeah, no, I think it's the association is there even for us. Like I don't think about that stuff when I'm cooking lunch for the kid. Like it's not part of my life really anymore, and it's basically for me too. It's those 2 weeks at the Open when I'm there, and that I get reminded and talk about it. And it's the same for the kids. I mean, my youngest two don't even. Probably, I mean, they do now that they were a little older. Up until a few years ago, they don't know that I play tennis. Like to what level that I play tennis, and so it's it's not something that I. She thought it was really cool. Like she thought it was fun. She thought it was cool to be a part of. She's kind of always been like, yeah, but basketball is so much cooler. The hype, it's so much more exciting. And then I always told her, just wait and see until you come to the U.S. Open, or if I take her to Wimbledon or anything like that. And she was like, "Mom, this is so cool, and I can't believe you played in a stadium, with all, with whatever 19, 20,000 people." And so I think as they get older, it kind of has a little bit more of an impact, or they understand it all a little bit better.
Yeah, she had to she probably dunked on her entire class on Instagram. What did you do this weekend? Look at what I did.
So I just arrived from last week, or like the starting the Tuesday of the main draw. I just flew back in from Hungary with her. Like she was playing European Championships under 16 for Belgium in Hungary, and she forgot her phone the day she had to fly out. She left her phone in Hungary in the hotel room. So she didn't have a phone for 3 weeks.
Oh,
yes, great.
That's incredible.
And
she lost her phone, and by lost her phone, she means Kim locked it in the safe before they left.
No, because she traveled with her team. Like, I wasn't a part of that.
Oh, okay.
She left it in the room in the morning. So it finally, it got to New York. One of the Belgian dads has a business, and he was doing something in New York City, and he brought it over. But literally 3 weeks later, so she hasn't had a phone for 3 weeks, and so she just started catching up over it again. I think Saturday night or Sunday morning after the event. So so she was catching up, and
I love that you used another person to carry the phone back. You couldn't FedEx it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Do they have FedEx? I've never been to Hungary, but I'm assuming they have delivery systems.
I know, but I was kind of listen, you left it.
Oh, okay.
You deal with it, it's.
That's great.
Yeah, I like that.
I like that a lot. And she's like 3 weeks. That's my only option.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
Some of the other moms were so are you going to buy her a new one? I'm like, buy her a new one? No way. She can
it's like the,
wait,
Kim's it's like the 1930s. She's trying to find someone who's catching a boat over. Deal with it. I'm sure you can find. I don't know why I became Irish.
Listen, we were in a beautiful place in Hungary, but there was, it was still very old school and very, so it took me a little bit. And again, I was at the US Open. I didn't want to deal with too much of it. So
let's beyond. I think Kim and I could just tell stories like this for an hour, but I'm sure the listeners probably want our thoughts or your thoughts on the final, of which you were able to toss the coin with Jada. A very cool moment. Talk through Aryna Sabalenka and Jess Pegula. You said you got emotional when Jess got announced. I think we were all, listen, I say the same thing about you all the time. If you have a problem with Jess, I think it's your fault. She's generally really, really well liked. She doesn't really have, enemies in the locker room, which is rare for most of us. Maybe not Kim and, there's probably 6 others throughout the course of history in our sport. But talk through Jess Pegula's run and then kind of balls and strikes of what you saw against Sabalenka.
I think that quarterfinal for Jess was a very big moment, right? To be able to, after, losing a few quarterfinals and a couple of them where she kind of should have won, I think. But to be able to kind of win her first quarterfinal, you could feel in the on-court interview afterwards that it was a huge relief. She was so excited, to kind of take her career to that next phase into a Grand Slam, which is a huge deal, right? To make the semis of a Grand Slam. Tennis-wise, I've always felt she's capable of doing it. It's at times I also think the experience, believing that you're good enough to be there, right? That was something that is also super important, and is to be able to believe that you can do beat these players at the Grand Slams when there is a lot more attention, when the craziness is happening around you, and just to see, she's so level-headed, she is so mature, I feel, and to see her win the semis and with the her strength is her consistency, right? She's not going to have a lot of variety in her game, but I felt that was her strength, to be able to beat somebody like Sabalenka. She wasn't able to do it because there was a few points here and there when she had to, where she kind of maybe didn't play quite her best tennis, but she has the consistency to break somebody down mentally as well, and tennis-wise, and just Sabalenka was too strong and too all around. We all talk about Sabalenka as this powerful hitter, and it almost makes it look like she's only powerful, but you saw her come to the net. We saw her move well. She's moving better than she's ever done. She puts variety in there. She mixes it up with the slice once in a while. It's maybe not always the most natural looking way of slice and volleys, but she makes it work. And it's the combination of the hard hitting that and the great serve. It's fun. She's fun to watch, Sabalenka. I love watching her.
Yeah, and just to put a bow on Jess's run, I think there's something that it isn't an issue mentally. When you have to answer for it over and over and over again, it might become it. So it's a story that you have to answer to. And frankly, no one would give a shit about Jess Pegula not being past the quarters if she wasn't so good. like if she didn't produce and win Masters 1000s and career high 3 in the world, and if there weren't, frankly, a lot of other players who are a lot less accomplished who have made slam runs and even won Grand Slams, as opposed to Jess Pegula. So I think the narrative is was especially interesting because she outperformed her Grand Slam performances so consistently on the other weeks of the year. But the match
I
against...
also felt like she was moving so much better too than ever before. I feel like her movement, like staying on top of the baseline, even like when she gets pulled back, like she's able to retrieve a lot more balls. And that was, that really caught my eye. Like I felt like even compared to like Wimbledon, the last Grand Slam, like I felt like she made a big improvement there.
Yeah, I think the three things, and you spot on in my opinion. I think she's gotten this. Listen, Jess is never going to be like tour elite as far as just speed. I don't think she's going to be tour elite as far as pace of serve. I think she's underrated as far as a ball striker. I think her ball gets through the court very quickly, and her ability to switch directions. I don't think she's too stressed whether she's hitting line or cross court, which is a huge skill that rarely ever gets talked about in commentary. But the best players on earth, like obviously Novak is the best of all time at finding the pattern he wants with doing that. I think she's great. I think getting out of the corners. Totally agree with you. I think this tournament she won more of those like 30 all points where it wasn't scripted, right? Where it wasn't the way that she drew it up. And also sneaky good little defensive slice now, like where she can kind of live to fight another ball. Not something
where
like she gets overpowered, but then she's basically finding a way to sneak 3 more points a set. Right? Like where it's kind of weird looking, where it's not this, first ball, drive to the corners, get control of it, and getting a little bit more movement on the second serve, right? Like just a touch more where it's moving by the time you hit it and you're not getting that clean strike on it.
Andy, so do you think like a guy like Mark Knowles now, like in her team, do you think having been like a male player, like is that the influence of like having a male former player on your side a little bit, like helping the variety of the slices and I don't know, like...
You know what I think? Well, not necessarily, because like if I could counter the other way, like DeWitt goes from Jess Pegula and all of a sudden Frances is coming in more than he's ever come in. And DeWitt has mostly worked with on the men's side. You know what I think it is? I think a relationship being a home run of a success and then at a certain timeline in tennis, it becoming stale and you just need a fresh set of eyeballs on what you're doing. I think that matters. Like, I think there's a point where 6 years in, you can tune someone else. Like, you need to use your slice more, and you're too comfortable, and you're like, get off my case. Whereas someone comes in and was like, we need to do this, or there's a certain level of focus. And also, like, Jess has played a ton the last 3 years. I don't know if there's been that much time to work on it. She's missed some time this year where maybe there's 2 or 3 weeks at a time where you're not under the gun of pressure of having to play a match where you can actually work on things. And this is all just guessing. But anyways, I thought the win against Iga was one of the best matches she ever played. I think Muchova might have played the best set I've seen in 6 years of tennis. The first set against Jess Pegula, it's like she was playing video games. I don't think Jess gets herself out of that headlock 2 years ago. And then I thought she did great. I mean, Sabalenka's a very tough, like she's just a tough opponent for her because she's going to munch on second serves with which Jess, it's not elite. But I thought Jess was phenomenal. I'm happy she had that moment. It's funny you mentioned the Sabalenka where she's obviously like blunt force trauma, right? Like she's she comes out of the gates. Her goal is to get as aggressive as possible as soon as possible. But there is that nuance. I think the shot that saved that from going 3 sets for her was just serving for the set at 5-4, second set. Sabalenka comes in, plays a couple awkward shots, and then hits this like turnaround backhand high, lob over the backhand side and kind of lays it down short in the court. That's not power. And that's a clutch shot where there's a little nuance involved. To your point, it might have been, the most important point of the match that kind of stopped Jess's momentum in that second set, and then kind of got to shush the crowd a little bit.
No, you're right. I think that it was very noticeable, like coming in, even the drop volleys once in a while. Like it just, you don't know what to expect, and you're trying to keep her as far back as possible so that she can kind of, use the strength and. But it's I actually hit against Jessie a few years ago in Chicago, and I think we played a set, got killed. But like her strength is like to try to keep the ball as low over the net and as deep as possible, right? Like to keep you on your back foot, and it's just she has to have the chance to do that. And against Sabalenka, is the first 2 shots of the rally, the return and the serve, are just too strong, and she beats her to it. And but definitely, her.
It's just it's
she's
just
adding to her game, and it's great to see. Like she's
Jess is going to make her year by getting on the front foot, and it's just tough because against Sabalenka, with what she brings, you normally start going back before you go forwards. Whether it's on the return or whether it's on. How close of a comp is, so if you talk about kind of who you played, is Sabalenka, and I'm not saying she's as good or as great, and the movement's not the same, the consistency of serve is not the same, but as far as just style-wise, where you're constantly having to deal with the power, is her closest comp Serena Williams?
Yeah, definitely. When I was watching the match and just sitting, behind the court and seeing the power of that comes off the one side, like it reminded me so much of like trying to hang in there. You just have to try to stay with her. Obviously, when you have somebody who's serving as well as Sabalenka, you put a lot more pressure on your own return games too, and on your service games especially. Like there's so much more pressure on your own service games. So if you're not serving quite as well, and you just constantly feel under pressure, and you feel like every shot that you hit, you have to do something with it, and that becomes sometimes a little bit overwhelming. And but being able to move well, I think Jess was able to really kind of break her down in certain points. And I remember back in the day, like when I was able to play against Aryna and win a set or win a match, like it was because of that, like just by bringing 1 or 2 shots back and just making them doubt in those kind of situations, and like 1 or 2 more, and then they start overhitting, or they try to go a little bit more to the lines, and they go a little bit more out of the comfort zone. And I think that's where Jess had to try together, and she was very close to getting Sabalenka to that point, because if she could have, won that the second set, who knows what could have happened there. But a good overall, like a really good learning experience. I think she leaves this match saying like I feel like I can beat her. Like she definitely had chances to do it.
Yeah, and also like just the mental scar tissue of having done it. Next time she's in a quarter, there's not going to be that like pressure set where you wake up and you're thinking all of these things. All right, you chuckers, summer's officially over. Yep, the U.S. Open is done, and you know what that means. Fall is closing in. In an early fall in North Carolina, the weather is kind of all over the place. One day it's 80 degrees, the next day you're reaching for a sweater. That's why Brooklinen's Percale sheets are my personal go-to. They're cool and crisp for those lingering warm nights, but just right as things start to cool down. It's the perfect transition, just like wrapping up the tennis season and settling into fall. Plus, you can fully deck out your bed with Brooklinen. Whether it's sheets, blankets, or duvets, they've got you covered. Get it? Covered? So if you're feeling that post-summer shift like I am, why not layer up and get your bed ready for the fall? Trust me, chuckers, Brooklinen's got your back. And here's the best part. Brooklinen is hooking you up. Head over to brooklinen.com and get 15% off your first purchase. Whether you're layering up for fall or just upgrading your bedding game, don't miss out. Get in on the comfort now. With Sabalenka, and then we'll move on to maybe some other names that were in the tournament. Sabalenka, it's weird. She's had like a long road of shaking certain narratives, right? So I feel like in tennis specifically, like the way someone starts is kind of a lot of the talk that follows them for a long time in their career, right? We don't easily accept a change, right? So 6-7 years ago, as an example, like Sabalenka's reputation was like, okay, she's up and down mentally. She can be streaky. Who knows if she's going to stay in the match? Is she mentally tough? All of these things. And when I hear people and fans and they're asking questions, it's like there's still those dumb narratives. And I'm going, okay, what else does she have to do She's been the most consistent Grand Slam performer across surfaces. Iga's won more slams, but, she's dominant on clay. And then as soon as they step onto other surfaces, Sabalenka for the last 3 or 4 years has been the standout, I think. And not just as far as wins, but as far as if you had to scribble a name in the semis in 3 out of the 4 slams, she's probably the one that you're scribbling in. Okay, so that's consistency, which we normally give credit to as far as mental toughness. The thing that hardly even got mentioned during the U.S. Open is there are not a lot of players who go through serving yips, just complete chaos. We forget that 2.5 years ago, she would hit 1 out of 10 serves on the frame. She was in a terrible place. And then all of a sudden she disappears for an off season, puts in the work, doesn't fire team members, said, this is on me. Let's add it. Let's add, not take away, goes through biomechanics. And all of a sudden she has one of the best servers in the world. And it's like, we just picked up and we're like, oh, that never happened. If we can't talk about her with having mental fortitude at this point, we're being lazy.
I actually get chills about it because to me, seeing or not seeing it from up close, but hearing about some of the things that she has had to go through, in her private life, losing her father who was close to her, those are all kind of big mental burdens that, happen to you, and you have to try to play through it. And again, I've experienced it, you have experienced it. There's bad things that happen in your private life that do change how you think with the stuff that happens to you on the court. And I think having what happened, to her father, the situation in Miami with her ex-boyfriend, those are all big, kind of life, they have an impact on your life. And a few years ago, I don't know exactly at what tournament it was, she did a press conference, I think it was at the Australian Open a few years ago, where she said, I was started to look, everybody's recommending a psychologist to me. And then a couple of times I went to talk to the psychologist, and I realized, everything you're saying is things that I have to handle myself. I don't need this. I need to grow up. I need to figure out okay, my attitude needs to change in certain, and there's not a lot of players who can do that. Like you said, a lot of players are so stubborn, and they've gotten to a point, if you make top 50 or top 100 in tennis, you're, seen as a top player. But she wanted to make more out of it. And she realized listen, I'm not happy with just being a top 10 player or a top 20 player. I need to make a difference. And she felt where her weaknesses were. And I think that's a huge mental kind of maturity that she's gained, or the attitude that she's built, and is to always improve. And she does it in a way that is so playful, and that kind of, I feel it's with good energy as well. And if I see the camera, the footage of the players in the warm-up area where they don't know that they're being filmed, she's dancing, they're laughing, she's the atmosphere with her team it looks good, and she needs to have fun, and that's what it's all about. Is having that combination of knowing when to have fun, but then also knowing when to turn it on and be focused on the match. And I think she's grown so much in realizing okay, this is what I have to do to become a better tennis player. She dropped the doubles a few years ago to really focus on developing her overall game and her mind as a singles player, and it's all worked, and it's only gone upwards.
And I feel certain times we have this picture of what mental toughness is, right? And it's so Borg didn't say anything, so he's mentally tough. Rafa is allergic to showing negative energy, right? Roger is calm, cool, and collected. I feel like we didn't give Novak enough credit for how mentally tough he is for a long time because he emotes, right? He just goes about a different way. He does better when there's friction. We just need different energy. And I feel like we haven't given her credit soon enough, meaning Sabalenka, because she emotes, because she lets us in, because we never have to wonder what she's thinking. We see that insecurity in real time, but then we don't finish the conversation and say, okay, we all have those insecurities, but look at how she's dealing with it. We never close the loop on the answer, as opposed to pointing out the kind of real-time equation. The other thing that I'm watching her live, and it finally dawned on me, I'm I didn't have this at all, and I wasn't even close to it, but she's up a set in 3-0, and it looks like could be over in 12 minutes. Jess goes on a run, wins 5 games in a row. The ability to be that aggressive and keep shooting your shot, even though you've missed 17 balls in the last 12 minutes, is a skill that I didn't have. Like, I need it. If I'm missing, I'm losing confidence. I'm trying to make balls. Like, I'm trying. Like,
Serena had that
oh
too.
God, how you and Roger did, how you commit to like just going back there, like deleting all the stress, deleting the insecurity, and going and shooting again is a skill. I don't know if you're born with it. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's almost like they say, like, all right, enough messing around, like get your shit together, like focus. Like it's I mean, I felt it many times against Serena, where you think you're so close to winning, and then all of a sudden there's like 3 aces and a forehand return winner, and it's like nonstop. Like they just step it up, and the ability to just step up when needed. And she has that too. And yeah, it was very clear for us to see in that second set.
I was
Saturday.
with another former player who's super accomplished, and we're kind of talking through it in real time. And she's like, "Gosh, she just needs to tighten it up and make some balls." I'm like, "Okay, so let's walk this out over 10 years." Does Sabalenka have a more successful career? And this is impossible for a player to think about in real time, because you don't think about it in 10-year fragments. You think about it like the next 10 minutes, the next 4 shots. Over 10 years, and it gets to the point where I'm like, I admire this ability so much. Over the next 10 years, Sabalenka just keeps shooting her shot, right? And just all out aggression, and I'm going to smother you, and I'm going to miss some, but I'm going to keep shooting. Does she have more success doing that, or actually being situational with like 1 shot here, 2 shots there, reining it in, doing that, or just full on, like, I'm going to commit to offense for the next 10 years? I think she has more success and wins more slams the way she's doing it. Like, I don't even know that I think she can improve skill sets, like Kim was talking about, coming in, volleying, improve your skill sets. But as far as that mentality, like, play to your strengths. Like, that is a superpower to have, like, the delete button on the last 20 minutes that have been horrendous.
Yeah. And I feel like in my situation, like, I didn't have that delete button until I got older. Like, where I learned to, as I got older, to be like, not feed the negative voice anymore. Like, it was still there at times, but I wouldn't feed it. Like, I was able to push it aside, but with her, like, you can see it. Like, it came it's almost like, I'm going to say, like, animalistic in a sense, right? Like, it's almost like that instinct of like, it's got to come out. Like, I got to, like, change it around here. And it was, really, really impressive. And I agree. Like, I think her best, and I also think, like, a lot of, like, players' personalities show in those kind of moments, right? Like, how is somebody, like, in extreme stress situations or under pressure situations, like, I feel like you can see the personalities of players that will come out and in those times, and whether it's through the experiences like we mentioned in the past, like finding that deeper kind of strength is I feel like what you need in those certain times. And Serena, like, she was, to me, the best. I mean, over how many years? 20 years. She was the best at it, and on the women's side, so Sabalenka is incredibly strong when it comes to that. And
can you talk about that in the context of the fact that she had to make it through 2 Americans also?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a good point.
What's the mentality like? You're going out that tunnel not as the crowd favorite in one of the loudest environments possible.
You can't speak for her. I mean, she handled it well. It's weird where I think it's a credit to her, and Kim touched on it quickly, and I have it written down as like the next talking point, is that she's also done it her way, right? It's like, I would have never in my life had my trainer show up with a tattoo on his head where all of a sudden, like, it's a laughy jokey thing during a slam. I would have wanted to vomit. But also her committing, and I put this in a tweet afterwards, like, it's this weird mix of grit, intentionality with progress, and also never losing your sense of humor. And I think that serves her well. And to her credit, it's not she's going out there and is mad at the crowd. She fully understands the situation. It isn't like, screw you, making a big thing or whatever. She goes, competes. She gives them grief sometimes, But then as soon as the match is over and she's at the interview stand, the crowd goes nuts for her.
Yeah, she offers
like
them
it's like
margaritas.
and she's like, now you guys are cheering for me,
which
like,
is
she
great.
calls
It was
them out,
great.
and it's
Which
like
is
it's
perfect.
great.
It's perfect.
It is great.
But I think the thing that we get so narrow-minded with, and I'm learning it as I have more distance from the sport, because I think we're too close, we're too like in our own shit when we're out there. It's just that there are so many different ways to get to greatness. Right? Sabalenka's laughing, joking, and making bets about tiger tattoos. And, Sinner is very calm. He's the most relaxed person. I met him. I'd never met him before. I met him before the final because it was like I awkwardly bumped into him in the locker room, and it would have been awkward not to say something. But relaxed and like it's just like I always use the example. What if someone tried to coach the volleying technique out of McEnroe? Or what if someone tried to coach the Vamos finish from Rafa? What if someone tried to coach those things out of them because they weren't technically accepted at the time? What if someone tried to coach out this friction, the ability to create friction for Novak, and the basically laying off and not getting into it? Like, what if someone tried to coach those things out of players? And how often does that happen? You have to commit to who you are and find your best process. It's not one size fits all. Look at Roger, Rafa, Novak, Serena. Literally, you could not have 4 more different personalities in the way that they go about things, the way that they act an hour before a match. Serena's like, fuck you, you're not taking my lunch. Like, get out of here. Novak is like this. He's just intense. Rafa's doing kangaroo jumps and somersaults for an hour before they go on. And Roger's like playing Angry Birds. They say it's time to go play Wimbledon final, and he flips his thing, puts his ding on, and then puts his headband on, and then he goes out and dominates you. It's like, but with Sabalenka, I appreciate there's just different processes, and hers just looks really fun. And she dives in afterwards, and she like has a smile, and it's like she's up for a joke, but also is committed to improvement. I don't know. It seems like she has a great balance. I admire her more and more.
Yeah. And when you see, like, let's say somebody like Iga Swiatek, who's like the opposite of, right, who's so like focused and walks around like the players area, like does it still like focused up there about the next game or the next practice. Like there's constantly tennis on their mind. It almost seems like, whereas, I think it's so important to be able, and I call it like the tennis switch, like a light switch, like to be able to turn it on and off when like at the right time that works for you is something that's super, super important, especially, in such a long kind of tournament at, the US Open, where they're there like training the week before, like you're so committed and you have to be able to switch it off. And when the nerves are there, laughing, joking, doing like a little bit of dancing, it helps to kind of release it. But everybody's personality comes through differently.
We're going to have more US Open recap with friend of the show, Kim Clijsters, coming back after this break. What's going to happen with Naomi, Raducanu, Rybakina, Coco, Ons? I don't know. Let's have a quick thought on all of them. Then we'll get to the men's final as well, and the new dominance of Sinner Chicken Dinner. We'll be right back. This is Served, brought to you by Chase.
You, Chase, the perfect match. Wherever you are in the game of life, Chase is here to support your goals, just like they have supported the US Open for 43 years and counting. Find out how you can make more of your US Open at chase.com/US Open.
Welcome back to Serve, presented by Chase. Listen, I have fun when Kim comes on because I always like to learn from the perspectives of champions. It's a real gift. Sabalenka is fascinating. The juxtaposition between her and Iga that you mentioned before break, it's like I watch Iga and I'm like, yeah, I was that stress ball all the time. Like but that's like how I always had this thing where it was like, I don't know, if I relaxed and I was 15 in the world, would I be happier, or am I maximizing everything and is it worth it? And I don't know. They're probably both a little true, and it's probably why I retired when I was 30. Like I just woke up one day, I was like, I can't do it.
But were you like also like really, really stressed off the court? Like
during tournaments?
The tournament, were you? Really?
I was good at being easy, but like the day of a match, like tournaments, and I was very specific about how I wanted things done. Big thing of routines. Like I was difficult. I wasn't to the point where I couldn't say hello. Like it wasn't kind of that manifestation of it. But like, yeah, I had to. I feel like I had to win a practice set the Friday before a Monday. Otherwise, it was like panic. It it wasn't always fun, and I wish I had a little more Sabalenka in my game.
The year I won the Australian Open, I lost in I think it was the Sunday or the Saturday before my first match. I lost my first like a set 6-love to Sabine Lisicki.
Just got smoked.
So,
Did that bother you?
Like, a little. I mean, at the time a little bit, but then next day, new practice, felt the ball, was good, and okay, ready to go.
That would have sent me into a tailspin. That would have been a problem. All right, so give me a quick thought. Where do we go from here with kind of some of the bigger names on the women's side of the game? We have a lot more clarity around Jess Pegula and who she is after this tournament. A lot more clarity as if we needed it. At this point now, she's entering like the legacy era with Sabalenka. Does she have 3? Does she have 7? Does she have 8? Where does she end up? She's kind of entered that conversation. I still think she wins a Wimbledon title at some point. She literally hasn't played it 2 of the last 3 years. So I think that, is for another day. But Naomi Osaka, after coming back, you've been through kind of the comeback after becoming a mother. What's your takeaway? What's your stock? What's your take on her moving forward?
I felt already at the French Open when the best match that she played was against Iga Swiatek, where she had match points. I felt like she made a big improvement at that stage. And then her first round, I think it was Ostapenko, right? That she beat in the first round of great tennis. And there I was like, listen, if once you have that feeling, you could see that she, there was a relief, also when she was on court afterwards, when she walks off the court, there was an enjoyment back in it. Okay, listen, this is where I want my tennis to be. And it's nice to feel that after maybe not having felt that consistently for a long time. And so I really, really thought that that was kind of a new fresh start for her, where she could maybe push, deeper into the second week of the US Open. But then, at times, when you then watch her next match, you still feel like there's that, the doubt creeps in at times, and maybe the inability to kind of read the opponent at times as well.
I mean, we do need to say she probably had the worst draw. She plays Ostapenko, who
definitely
is,
and then Mukova.
And then Mukova, I don't know how she hasn't been top 3 in the world forever. I watch her, and it's.
She hasn't been able to stay healthy.
I know. I hope she gets that run, because I think she is an elite tennis player. I think she's phenomenal. But Osaka, it's a brutal draw. Everyone's like, oh, she got upset by Mukova. I'm like, she's been in the finals of the French Open, was in the semifinals of the US Open last year, and then had 9 months off in between and made the semis again. That's absurd.
But she definitely, I watched her play Elise Mertens in Indian Wells this year, and you could still see and feel there that once you got her to move out wide, she wasn't just as quick. You had to recover, and so, but that takes time. It takes time to get your body back to the same tennis kind of shape that you were in before, and so I felt like French Open, which maybe isn't her favorite surface, but the US Open, she was moving well again. I felt like she was just doing all the right things, and obviously not. Tough draw, but I do think she's going in the right direction, and I think if she can keep consistent and putting the work in, and finding enjoyment in being on tour for many weeks in a row and playing a few tournaments in a row to get that routine back, I think she can definitely cause some more damage and win slams.
And the movement piece is
because her tennis is good enough, right?
And the movement piece is interesting, and it must be tougher also, because if I can draw a comparison to your comeback, your movement was elite from the day you picked up a racket. You're one of the best movers ever. Osaka, it's probably the toughest thing to come back. You don't forget how to hit a tennis ball, but the movement piece is massive. But that's not Osaka's strength. She's not an elite mover. She was never an elite mover. She's an elite ball striker, and she's powerful. She serves massive. So I think it's going to be tougher for her to find that back, maybe a tougher process back, because the footwork and the defending sideline to sideline isn't, we all have parts of our game. You could wake me up at 3 a.m. and I could hit a serve, right? But I can't do anything else. like on call like that. So I think it will be tougher for her coming back, but I hope she is motivated to schedule a heavy schedule again next year, because I think she's on the cusp of making like a massive run again and being a problem for more consistently.
I agree.
Yeah, I hope she, I hope she gets there, because it seems like she has perspective as and is enjoying process as much as she ever has, despite not having the results that she's used to and that we're used to for her. Next one that's interesting to me, and I'm really curious to hear your opinion on this, because I'm a fan of hers, and I think sometimes she gets treated unfairly, and also she doesn't do herself any favors with scheduling and decisions, and it just, I can't figure out where I'm at with it. But is Raducanu, right? She does well. It's like she won't play qualies at all for whatever reason. Pulled out of the French when she had to play qualies, and it's not a good look when someone who has the pedigree of Naomi Osaka decides to play qualies in Cincinnati, and she's not too proud to do it. But Raducanu has a great run. I feel like she almost creates her own speed bumps in getting back to where she wants to go. Wimbledon, she plays well. For a minute, it was like, gosh, is she gonna make a run to, all of a sudden kind of disappear and then come back and make a run again? DC, she plays well, makes semis, but it gets through a bunch of matches and then doesn't get wild cards. So she goes home for 3 weeks, doesn't play anymore after having played back to back. Like, you, as a player, when you're coming back, you want to build those weeks where it's like, okay, 4th round of a slam, semis of a tournament. Let's keep it going. Let's keep building. The last thing you want is a stop sign at that point, and especially a self-imposed stop sign before the U.S. Open. She comes in and loses first round.
Yeah, no, there's like two things that either, that I think could be the reason because of it. It's either, is it maybe not having the right people around you who kind of guide you in saying, okay, this is important to you, like the scheduling, building enough time, weeks off in between, like having training blocks to improve, to kind of mentally switch off a little bit as well. Or is it her? Like, is there other things going on mentally where she's kind of just had it with the, whatever it is, media pressure, whatever it is. I don't know. It's, to me, it's only those two things that could be the cause, I think. I don't know how you think about it, but I don't know enough about her. I don't know her personally. I don't know her team. I don't know much about the whole situation, but I mean, yeah, some of the things you mentioned, like, I'm sorry, but if you have a team of coaches around you or your whoever it is that is in charge, there's obviously some misguidance there.
Yeah,
I feel like.
I don't know what it is. I just get frustrated because obviously if she wins, it's going to be amazing for the game. Like, it's going to be so additive.
She's great.
Yeah, and
she's great. Like,
so it's like more just I'm like, she goes home after Washington. And I'm like, oh, like, you're gonna, like, no, build. You have
exactly,
some momentum.
But that's how we feel. But then who does she want to go home, or who is saying that in her closed environment? Is it parents? Is it coaches? Is it herself? Is it?
Listen, no, fine, but like
I'm not having a go at anybody, but it's just like, where is that decision making coming from? Like, and I think that's where you need to start looking. Is like, okay, how can we kind of attack or learn about those kind of decisions that are being made? Because I think if you talk to any past player, they're all gonna say like, that was weird. That was probably not the right move to do.
Listen, my kids want ice cream 6 times a day, and sometimes you got to say like, maybe that's not the play for you right now. Maybe
three is only enough.
Yeah, maybe we can just like work backwards from that 6 number. Another one that's interesting, and I don't know. The circumstances here are, I just don't know. But Elena Rybakina, you look, there's a coaching mix up, and she's pulled out kind of suddenly from 6 or 7 events. When she does play, it's not as if like the level's completely dropped off, because when she plays great, and she makes finals and wins tournaments, and when she's in full flight, she's as good as anyone in the world. But wins convincingly first round the U.S. Open after a coaching breakup, and doesn't mention specifics, but just says like, I'm injuries, I'm out, like I'm done. And it seems like that's, I don't know. I hope, I don't feel like we know the full story, and And I hope it's something that is a short-term problem or an issue, or if it's hell, we just don't know what it is. But like, are we just in wait and see mode with her? There's obviously more to this story, but like, I mean, we can't really it's tough to have an opinion on something you don't know anything about.
Exactly. Like, I think there's definitely more, like, more will come out, once
her coach got banned from like there's a coaching list of available coaches, and they kicked him off. So you don't get kicked off for nothing.
No,
Is that safe?
He was like, he got banned. He was at the Open. He had a credential, like, he was there, and it's like a weird, So it's it's all a guess, I think, to everybody really, besides some people who are part of the organization. But I think we'll find out more in the future about it. But at the moment, I don't think it's anything. It's not going to be anything good.
Same. There's like an impending feeling of like bad news coming, or like like a bad story coming, or something. And I would love to be wrong. This is purely conjecture. This is pure just wondering out loud. I don't know. What I do know is that she is elite when she is ready, happy, focused, playing. For my money, the best serve in the women's game, can hit all four corners. Easy stroke production, doesn't look violent, is very smooth, especially for her size with movement. I hope she finds her happiness on the tennis court and health on the tennis court sooner rather than later. Coco, I kind of feel like she had to get past this U.S. Open because I think there have been issues in her game that are well documented, and that the game planning for her has become pretty straightforward for players. And then the serve is an issue. Like it's tough. I think she had 10 or 11 double faults in the third set against Emma, and that's no matter how good you are and no matter how elite you are at other parts of the game. It's tough to get around that, right?
Yeah, and also it also kind of it seeps through to the other parts of your game a little bit. Once you have that doubt when you start the point with the serve, and your next shot's going to be like, it's just not the same. And so it's unfortunate. And again, it takes, like, we've all had to develop, we've all had to learn. Look at Sabalenka, you mentioned it before, like how she struggled with her serve at times. And I think with Coco, it's a little bit more of it's not the yips as much. I think it's a little bit more like, maybe it's like some technique issues here and there. She's been able to win a lot of matches. Imagine how good she can be.
I know.
That's like, when I watch her play, I still feel like there's so much more growth to be done, like for her. Like, she can improve so much more still.
Yes.
And that's the great part about it. That's the positive thing about all this, is that she can still improve so much. If she can shorten the points with winning forehands, and there's so much improvement still to possible for her.
And the part that I'm happy she just said it, because I think it's easier when you're just acknowledging something. I think the path to fixing it becomes a lot more straightforward. But she said in her present, like, I could go out on the practice court right now and hit 40 serves and not miss one. And that's the kind of, I won't, she said it, so I'll say it. But BG says the same thing. Like, you go out there and try to fix something afterwards, and it's fixed as soon as you leave the stadium. Like, it's a weird. So listen, she still gets too forward. The ball, like, there's no way that your head can consistently be ahead of, 6 inches ahead of where you're making contact. Like, it kind of has to be a little bit more above. You cannot create spin when your head is leaning and your racket is following. Like, it happens to some extent, but there are some technical issues. But for some reason, in the pressure moments, old habits seep in. And for some reason, those old habits, even if they're not productive, feel more comfortable for her to go to the tighter it gets, even though they're almost like self-sabotage at this point.
I almost felt like when I watched her against Emma, that also, it's almost like she's already worried about the next shot before she's finished her service motion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, she serves, and in the upward motion, it's like she's almost already thinking about, I got to get ready for the next shot, and I have to push back. Whereas, I don't know. Yeah, finish the serve, and she's fast enough and she's strong enough to counter the a good return coming at you. But it's almost like she, is like wants to get it in and then in the service box and then make sure that she's ready for that return. And
yeah, I to kind of echo what you're saying, she's like throughout the whole year when struggling with serve kind of manifests itself in different areas of the game, forehand type moment. So she's gone through all of this stuff, and like having one shot that doesn't feel great is brutal to deal with when you're out there and exposed. Having two shots to deal with, and she was still 2 in the world yesterday. When this stuff all starts going right, like anyone who like right now, I'm buying low on Coco, right? Like everyone's kind of bagging on her, this, that, and the other. When that shit starts working, she is going to be a problem, and I do think it will work. She's 20 years old. Like we also forget when people are around, we like to just age it. Like I love Emma, and we need to talk about her as well because she's so much fun to watch. But it's like Emma, young up and coming. Yeah, but then Coco, it's like, oh, she's on the way down. I'm like, she's 3 years younger. Like, I mean, it's like, time doesn't equal age. All right, so we'll move on. Yeah, I'm not worried about Iga. She's gonna be fine. Like she's gonna win a bunch of slams and the whole thing. Muhova's a genius. Let's take a quick break and we'll spend some time on the men's. If Kim can stick around, I always take more time than she's promised. Right back on Served, presented by Chase. Hey there, Chuckers. I used to rely on precision, power, and maybe a little bit of innovation to keep my serve untouchable. Well, turns out those same things aren't just for tennis. They're for racing too. Who knew? Since 2017, Lexus Racing has been doing exactly that. Precision, power, and a whole lot of innovation. Last year, they teamed up with Vassar Sullivan and snagged the 2023 IMSA GTD Pro Class Championship with their Lexus RCF GT3. And let me tell you, that car's got more horsepower than I ever had in my serve. Don't tell my ego. But like any good athlete, one win just isn't enough. All right, a little too personal, but that's fine. They're back and they're gunning for another title in 2024. You can't miss those Dayglow yellow and black Lexus RCF GT3 race cars on the track. And if you do somehow miss them, you'll definitely hear those V8 engines roaring louder than my victory yell after a big match. So if you want to see what happens when you mix tennis-worthy precision with race car power, follow Lexus Racing every weekend. Head over to lexus.com/motorsports to learn more about Lexus Racing and get all the details on the upcoming races. All right, we are back on Serve, presented by Chase. Kim probably has shit to do, but we're going to keep her on for another segment. She can't go anywhere now. It'd be weird. Let's get to the men's side. Jannik Sinner, weird 3 weeks that ended in just a dominant performance over the weekend, semis and finals. You know what? You're pretty good. You run the table 3 out of 5 without losing a set in the semis, in the finals. I'll tell you what, like I was at that match, and this is the most I've watched Sinner in person over the last couple of weeks and really got down low courtside. His movement is insane for someone who's 6'4" to be able to get in out of the corners and create like stick and pace on the full movement. And when you watch him from that like bird's eye view that I hate in tennis that we've been watching for 5 decades, where you can't really understand movement and spin, his ball has so much more shape on it than I ever knew. Like he tops out on forehands and it's still going hard through the court. Right? Normally, okay, so like to explain, like we talk about Jess Pegula's ball flight, Novak's ball flight on the back end. The special sauce is it's low and it forces your opponent to have to attack from low positions, which means you have to get it up and down as opposed to just flatten through, right? So it's an easier prospect when the ball's up, a little bit above waist level. That's where people like Kim Clijsters can fuck you up, right? Sinner like tops out on his forehand. He has them all. Like he can from any ball position, he can hit heavy line, heavy cross, heavy inside out, flat, heavy inside out with speed. It's just like the options of his forehand side are unbelievable. I mean, there were a million balls yesterday against Taylor Fritz where I thought he had missed it by 6 inches, and all of a sudden it was 6 inches in front of the baseline, and the bottom drops out. Like that guy, that ball's reaction to gravity is more than most. I mean, what do you see when you watch Jannik Sinner? It's insane in person.
To me, it's also his movement that really stands out to me, and it's like, hearing you talk about like his forehand and the options that he has, like it's, to me, that all starts with being in the right position to have, to give yourself the time and the space to let that arm rip. So to me, I feel when he runs out wide, he's so low to the ground. Like he bends his knees. Maybe at times it looks a little bit like, oh, he's going to fall backwards or he's a little bit off balance, but he pushes off and he's incredible. And he's obviously has gotten, maybe doesn't really look at as in muscle stronger, but he's gotten stronger. Like he's gotten better physically to be able to do that, to play like that for, 5 sets if he has to. And that's what I've loved about him, especially in these last few months, is the ability of moving out of the corners and then being fast enough to take over when he's in a defensive situation.
It's like I'm watching the match with Fritz, and it's at the end of the first set, and Taylor didn't serve well, so that was, he was 38% in the first set, but otherwise hitting the ball great. Like he came out, like they were pumping the ball, but to the point where it's like you get to the point in the match where it's like, okay, I'm losing. What adjustments can be made? And based on Taylor's playing style, Taylor's not going to serve and volley. He's not going to chip and charge. It's not the way his game is built, and you can't just say do that. I don't know where he goes. Like it's similar to Novak, where it's like you can't go through him and you can't go around him. And also he can, create spin and speed at any moment. And it's like I'm amazed because most people who have that like lag on the forehand, right, who like flip that wrist back, they can't create the speed on a moment's notice normally. They need a little bit more time in their feet underneath them. His quick, like he lags it. And then, I mean, you have people who are quick to the ball, but they don't have that lag. Like Andre was quicker on the ball than anyone I've ever seen, could create, recognize and create offense. Like you're just under the gun, the threat of it the whole time. Sinner can do it, but he has that lag also. Like I don't, he's like a rubber band. Like it's just absurd. And the one thing is, you were talking about his movement. I'm writing names down and I'm going, okay, so the single non-negotiable seemingly now that's more different, and you were great at this, but is more different than 20 years ago as far as like winning slams and being dominant. Look, like as I run through these names, think about their footwork and think about how little it gets talked about, whether you're teaching, whether it's commentary. We talk about forehands and backhands. We talk about serves. Rafa Nadal's footwork. Never in a bad position, always in control, especially from the center of the court. We celebrate the dramatic movements to the sidelines, but being in position from the middle of the court, that little circle C movement, elite. Federer, the movement in and out where he can cut off 3 feet of court to create the speed, not actually have to like hit a shot harder, is something I saw too often, but elite. Novak, his footwork to the corners and the stretching, and that like him building on the thing that Kim created, where she created a monster where everyone can slide into every shot now on a hard court. Like it's elite. You look at Swiatek, elite. Like she never is off with those little small steps. Like watch all of these people in isolation, right? Don't watch the ball go back and forth. Just watch their footwork. Elite. Sinner, elite. Alcaraz, elite. Kim started this shit with the weird movement and the sliding and all that stuff, and like the splits Magoo and all that stuff. Elite. Like you cannot negotiate movement and footwork now. It just doesn't. You don't have people who don't have great footwork doing well. Even Sabalenka's not elite. In the rest of her shots, they kind of look weird, like she's pulling off, and it's a dramatic movement. But the footwork and the rhythm between shots is very good. Maybe not elite like the rest of them, and she makes up with it with power, but footwork is non-negotiable. Like it's
the
non-negotiable.
Tool that makes you hit the ball better, right? It's the tool. Like it's not going to just win you matches, but you need it to be able to kind of set up, to get out of a defensive situation, to be able to go back and counterpunch and be the one in the attack mode again. Like that's where I felt at my best. Is okay, I'll run 2-3 times to the side if I have to, but as soon as I can take that step forward, or to try, the goal was to try and stay on top of that baseline. and to start dictating the point again. Like that's the goal, and that's where it was a tool for me to get back to that situation where I wanted to play tennis, and that was from on top of my baseline where I was the one dictating, guiding the ball like my opponent left to right. And that's where I feel Sinner has gotten. I've been lucky enough that, back in the day when I was dating Leighton, like I've been able to be on court with Darren Cahill.
Oh, fucking Leighton, Jesus, he's the fastest guy I've ever seen.
Yeah, but listen, listen to those guys talk and to hear them like analyze matches of their opponents, their own play, like their own game. Like you learn so much from that, and seeing the drills that they do, and there's not a second that they step on court, even if it's in mini tennis drills, like the warm up, like footwork.
God, yes.
From when I was younger, it's like, don't just stand there and hit the ball back and forth. No, like that can be a drill where you can really, really, really well work on footwork and on, I mean, we used to do drills all the time. I can name so many of them, but it's so, so important. And it needs to be a part of your DNA in a sense. Like when you start doing it as a kid, you will never not do it anymore.
Yeah, I think
this makes me think of the quote from Seal about technique.
Oh yeah, that's like I will get it wrong. We'll put it in here, but we can do a voiceover. But I would butcher it right now.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
There's an old saying. I think it was coined by the great Seth Riggs, who was a singing coach. He said that technique is only there to stop the body from interfering with the soul's free expression. So once again, technique is only there to stop the body from interfering with the soul's free expression.
To your point though, like it's something you can practice. The thing that drives me absolutely fucking bonkers is when I watch junior players and they spend the first 7 minutes of a practice doing this lazy, cool guy warm up, where they're not moving at all. It's like, no. I'm not asking you to go sprint before you're warm, but that little tap, 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 split, tap, tap, where you're creating that rhythm. You're wasting 10 minutes a day doing these stupid, lazy, like, I don't know how to explain it. For tennis players, you know what I'm talking about. Like, it's just this cool guy where you're doing like weird finishes and like posing and shit. Like Connors I worked with him for 2 years, and he was like the original Leighton of footwork, right? Like he was like the guy. I mean, his footwork is just insane. Perfect. And his whole thing was like, you have 10 minutes at the beginning of every practice to work on your footwork without anyone realizing that's what you're doing. Whether it's a warm-up for a match, and now start the compounding effect of those 10 minutes over time, and start it at 7 years old. When we talk about Malcolm Gladwell in 10,000 hours, I can't do the math on this, but you got to be close to an expert at footwork if you do that. Right? Like it's just
Andy, we were not allowed to have our heels on the court in our practice. Like, okay, from the moment that we started with mini tennis, like we had to be on the front of our feet. Like, and that was it. That was so drilled into us. And if the coach or the head coach came in and they saw us, that was it. Like we had to plank, or we had to do like, what do you call them, wall squats, or like that it was so drilled into us from when we were 7-8 years old that, and they call you got to keep dancing. You got to stay on the front of your feet. Like, but it's and it feels a little bit awkward in the beginning, but that's, if you're used to it, then that becomes the norm. And that's with everything, right? And is running for shots that are out. Like, go get them in practice. If you can get them when they're out, you will for sure get them when they're in. And so it's, that was kind of how we got pushed, I feel, when we were younger. And
I'm sitting here, I'm like doing the branding campaign for the Kim Clijsters School of Footwork. Footwork, it's not something you do, it's a way of life. But to the point, like I just watched Sinner, and his movement and footwork and just everything is just so complete. And he's just taking like the Novak school of I'm solid absolutely everywhere, and Taylor Fritz creates as much ball speed as anyone on earth, like through the court, straight through the court. You can't go through him. Tough to go around him. Serves well. Like, and to hear Sinner talk about himself, he's like, no, I don't volley that well yet. Like he's so, all he talked about post US Open victory was process and how he can't wait to get back to the process. Like, that's intimidating in its own way. Like, and he's just, it seems like he's low stress. I said hello to him because you walk into the locker room and my locker's like way to the right, but he takes up kind of that center area right before you got to make a move left or right in the men's locker room. And, Darren was there and Andre was there. And, at that point it would have been like I was just being a dick if I didn't, say hello to all of them. And the last thing I want to do, like, I had never met Jannik Sinner before in my life. Like, I don't know a lot of the players because I'm not at all the tournaments. And, I said hello quickly and then got out of the way because my biggest fear ever is like being in someone's way when they're getting ready for a match or something. But kind of like you hear, he's the most relaxed person I've ever seen this side of Roger before a slam final. Like, it feels like he has this very, very quiet confidence about the way that he goes about things. Even his celebrations aren't like for anyone else. It's like this relief, like, okay. And you feel like he was ready to start again, like an hour after the US Open, which is a problem for the rest of Earth. This next part that we're going to talk about, I hate more than most things right now. But like the Taylor Fritz is not like an emotional. He's not someone that I think cries at Hallmark commercials, right? Like, I don't think he is a weepy person in general. I don't think, like, there are criers and there are, people that don't, and he's not. And then after the match against Frances, where it's they run through the litany of just overplayed stats of no American final since this and US Open since that and finals of US Open since that. And his attachment to wanting to be the guy to end this drought is I watch it and I'm like, man, like, I hate that you have that on. Like, and then after the final, he's like, I know we haven't had, and he started getting like, he doesn't get choked up about anything, but this thing that he lives it just sucks. And I get anxiety every time they ask about it. I found myself watching the match and pulling for Taylor. I don't know if we're supposed to do that as journalists or whatever, but we have our own media company. I can't fire me. So yeah, I'm pulling for him. But then once the match finished and like the reality of this never ending fucking lame narrative happening, and it wasn't about me. It was about how much like it's there. It's like a presence. These guys have to talk about it. And I felt like I had lost a match. Like I sat there and I just like in like 10 minutes. And it was just like, I hate that he has to think about this. I hate that next year it's going to be another, like it's so tired. And I hate that they have to deal with it. Right. They're playing against ghosts.
It's such a media thing too, to always bring stuff like that up. To me, maybe I'm a little bit biased. Like, it's not that I wouldn't have wanted Taylor to win. Like, to me, it is more like, I'm not an American, I'm a Belgian, but I watched you win that title. And to me, I'm like, that was such a great moment. And I don't know, like, it's, yeah, like,
I feel like
American tennis, like, we had so much, like, there was so many great stories this tournament. And okay, maybe it's not the one at the end holding the trophy, but how many were there? Was there four?
4.
3 semifinals.
We had
4 semifinals.
We had half of all semifinals.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, that on its own is already a really good achievement. And if you want to compare that to how is American tennis, like, that's what I had to like answer all the time. Like, how come a country as small as Belgium creates like good tennis players? Like, I mean, it's what America, like, what happened for American tennis in these last 2 weeks has been amazing.
It's been amazing.
And I think just looking at from that side, okay, yeah, maybe it's not with the winner's trophy, but it is definitely great to see, players, improving and working on getting better and creating great stories for sports and having an impact and putting tennis even more on a higher platform here in the States.
And listen, I got to give credit where credit's due, because there are a lot of players, prominent players, that I think are scared to really, really try and commit. Even players that are not currently playing, but that are way more talented than Taylor Fritz. And I think they're scared to get punched in the mouth and have to get back up. And the fact that Taylor talks about it, commits to it, is not scared to take it on the chin. I don't think he's scared of losing. I just think he wants that thing, right? I don't think I admire the way he talks about it. Just plain speaks. I know you've been waiting. I wanted to do it. I promise you I want to do it. You know, maybe next time I will, but like, I don't know Taylor. I've never met Taylor, or if I have, he was probably like 12 and it was like, you know, I don't know, but
I met him a few years ago when we were playing World Team Tennis in West Virginia. It was during COVID. We were all kind of in a bubble there. Yeah. Seeing how much he works, and how hard he worked on his fitness to become stronger, to like everything, right? Like maybe not like at that time it wasn't all the on-court stuff, but it was like to help his body. Like we said, his movement has gotten so much better too. He's
an elite ball striker, and he's big and he can create speed and he gets motion on serve. But he wasn't born an elite mover.
No, but that really stood out to me, where there was so many other players there that were kind of just like, hey, this is fun. We're playing tennis, but we get to go and have fun afterwards, and we're not really doing too much. He was so committed, and that's what it is, right? The commitment, like to get great results. It doesn't just happen like 2 weeks before. Like it literally happened like 5, 6, like it's that commitment that you have to put in like week after week, and having the players maybe don't think long term, but having the right people on your team who can think like, okay, this is what it's going to take physically, and to work on certain things that are going to help you get better in 2-3 years time. Like it takes that much work, and I think he's done incredible when it comes to his movement and you know, knowing that you put in the work that helps you mentally as well, and it just builds your confidence.
Listen, and he's not responsible for the failings of the rest of us, right?
How long, Andy? How many years was it when you won? Like how many years was there between the last American that won?
Nothing. It was January of that year. Andre won the Aussie Open that January.
Yeah, but what about the U.S. Open? Like how long?
Oh no, Pete won the year before. That was the last tournament Pete won.
Oh really?
There was no time. Like I didn't have to. Like I had to deal with. Oh shit! Like I have to continue and I didn't. But I have to continue this fucking thing of monsters from the past 25 years. But there wasn't this. There was zero drought. Like there was nothing. I was right on the heels of Andre and Pete. Like they were winning every year.
But is that because of the media brings it up all the time, or is that because it's just so like you were brought up like watching them and knowing that American tennis is the most dominating, or what? Like what? Why is it has that such a big impact?
Mine wasn't so much like you have to win a slam. Mine was like the responsibility of they've built this amazing thing, whether it's, you know, viewership, whether it's everything else. I knew there were two parts to it. I didn't win as much as I wanted to, right? But there was also the responsibility of being a good steward, not, you know, having to deliver. If I wasn't delivering on court, I at least had to, you know, be available and at least do my part for tennis and this legacy that they've built. And then all of a sudden on the other side of the tour, there's Venus, Serena, like, it's like, okay, there's a lot going on and I just have to hang on. Like, I just have to, like, I have to at least do enough to where, you know, where it's not a narrative. You're in finals, at least, you know, you're in the conversation. So I felt I had a sense of responsibility, and it affected the way that I worked, like in a good way. I think I was better for having had it, but it wasn't as if there was this be all end all with a given match based on the ghosts of careers of people that I might not even know. Right. It's a very different scenario where all of a sudden these guys are having to apologize for what the rest of us didn't do. I could have cut 6 years off of this narrative if I won Wimbledon in 2009. Like so part of it's on me too. And I get pointed to as like, oh, you were fine. Like I fucked up in a million finals. I lost 4. I won 1. Like, so it's like they're having to apologize for what we didn't accomplish, which sucks. I don't like it, but I thought Frances played great. I love the fact that he's with DeWitt again. I know he's probably heartbroken with the way that ended, and his body gave out a little bit. at the end, but I love it. Like there's 5 guys in the top 20 right now, and there's no chance that Ben Shelton, who had been out of the tournament for a week, isn't watching Taylor Fritz and not going, I can be that guy too. Like, give me a shot. I can make that final. Tommy Paul thinks he can make that final. Frances thinks he can make that final. That is great. That is what is eventually going to do it. It's not one guy. I think the fact that if we can throw enough darts at the board, someone's going to hit the middle. Like, I really, really, truly believe that, and I'm inspired by it. I think it's great, and I don't have to come up with word salad anymore. I can plainly say these guys want it. They're not shying away from it. They're going for it, and you know what? Let's give them some fucking credit for taking it on the chin and not hiding from it. Right? Like I think they're doing the right things. I think they're working. I think they're trying to improve. Credit to Taylor. I sent a text to Mike Russell, his coach, who was on tour when I was on tour, and just said, pass along my congrats. Like, I don't know what he does differently in that matchup against Jannik Sinner. I don't know what his options would have been. He played a terrible game to start the match, and he played a terrible game when he was trying to serve out the second set. And that's a bad 3 minutes of 2.5 hours. That dictates a lot of what happened. But I was really proud of the U.S. guys. I really was. And Jess and Emma Navarro, who we have so much to talk about and so little time. But Emma Navarro is a rock star. Like I love the way she goes about it.
Me too.
She acts
to
the
me.
way
She reminded me like her and Mukova to me feel like very similar in a sense.
Yeah.
Like where it comes to attitude, the presence, maybe the game style a little bit as well. Maybe Mukova has a better serve, but like there's just a flair to their game. They can come into the net. They have the good slice. Like she's been so much fun to watch, and
I think she's great.
Yeah, really, really.
The way that she walks and carries herself, and like the stroke production is pretty. It reminds me a little bit of Chrissy too. Like she doesn't give you much, but she's just like, you see her, you catch her talking to herself, and you're like, there's a killer in there, even though she's not showing us. Like there's she has that kind of thing where she doesn't need to show you she's a killer. She just is a killer. But listen, the men's draw fell apart. The last thing that we need to talk about, and I don't know what the fix is. But like the Olympic hangover was real. And at some point in tennis, and I don't know who's responsible for it. Maybe we all are. And it's like plausible deniability if we can get away with it. But the schedule in tennis has to give. And all it does is we keep adding and nothing gets taken away. Like you look at Alcaraz. If you're looking at mid-May when you're ramping up for Roland Garros while trying to recover from an injury, which he was, and we conveniently forget that he barely played tennis leading into the Roland Garros this year, it's like 4.5 months of basically playoff tennis. Roland Garros, into Wimbledon, into the Olympics, switching surfaces, back on the hard courts. For anyone at some point, same with Novak. Like in Novak, it's even worse because he's had to do it for 2 decades. So it's not as if he arrives at the U.S. Open. It's like, oh shit, warm and fuzzies. I've only been here 3 times before. Like, it's even tougher mentally for him. And he's a savant with the way that he's been able to manage this over decades. But something has to give, and we know this is the case. We talk about it ad nauseum. And what do? We start adding another week to every fucking Masters 1000 on earth. And it's like under the guise of this is more rest for the players on off days. No. Give us rest in November. Like, I don't know what the fix is. Like, I got to fight. PTPA is coming on in a couple weeks because I said something and started fights on Twitter. And it's not their responsibility. Their intent is good, but there's like I'm sure a lot of people with good intentions, and seemingly nothing gets done with what I view as the single most important issue outside of generating revenue, which keeps the business going, and nothing happens. But
this was an issue already. Like I used to be on the board, like early, like whatever, 2004 or 5. Like it was already every year. That's a big issue. And yeah. I mean, what is the middle ground? Like what is...
Well, it's gotten to the point where there's no middle ground, in the point where it's like, oh yeah, we'll have conversations. To your point, those conversations have been going on forever, and there needs to be a players union of some sort. I'm not sure the PTPA is that. I think they're well intentioned. I'm not sure what and we're going to get smarter in the next couple of weeks with having them on, CEO and Vasek Pospisil, which I look forward to because I have many questions. But
can't wait.
I will be
to listen to that one.
I will be researched AF for that one. I'll tell you that. But listen, I don't know what to do because at some point it's like well-intentioned, lots of conversations, nothing happens. We're wearing our players out. Like Iga Swiatek cannot keep up that level of intensity over the course of time. Doesn't it benefit us to have our stars in the sport as long as we can? And if that answer is yes, don't we work backwards to solve for that answer? I don't know. It just drives me crazy.
I also feel very stuck kind of with my thoughts, not to a point where it's kind of like, it is what it is. Kind of, I feel a little bit more towards that. Like it will never change. Like that's kind of the feeling I have.
There's only one way.
Like, it's, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
There's only one way. And for those who don't get the awkward pause, it's participation. Yep. There's only one way it is ever going to change. And I'll map it out for you. There needs to be singular representation and post-US Open or US Open to get attention. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's probably not that. But listen, they've been betting against difference of opinions for people that like different services, speak different languages, are from different places, prioritize different things the most. That's been the bet against players for the last 40 years. Is like we all have different opinions and we can't organize. We can't organize thought. And not everyone falls in line. We're all independent contractors. What we have is our ability to show up and play. Until that chip is on the table, nothing will ever change. I'm not for it. It would be ugly. I think you would schedule a month of charity events, that benefits something. But at a certain point, the only thing that ever changes it is participation. And am I wrong? I know it's severe, but we've been avoiding severe forever. And now we play through December 15th.
But I think in the past, players have talked about it and not showing up, but if you only have a couple of them, not everybody feels the same at the same time, right?
Exactly.
Like that's a little bit of the issue too, is like, yeah, Iga may say and not saying, I'm just using her an example, like, oh, I'm feeling like, the US Open, like it's getting too much. Like I'm going to talk to a couple of other players and they're like, no, I'm okay. Like, it's fine. Like I had an injury. I was out for, a month earlier, like whatever it is, everybody has a different kind of feeling towards this and at different times. And it's really, really hard to get people thinking in the same direction on this.
Yeah. And
it's tough for the organization too. Like, thinking about the tournament directors, and they always want,
more.
They're limiting, the lower tournaments to have, the top players, but it's a tough
understand.
puzzle.
I understand both sides of it. I also, in my tennis post life, until very recently, I went away from tennis for 8 years and did a bunch of other things. And in no part of my business life has one side been represented as the same, has had the different sets of goals and represented by the same table in any business negotiation I've ever been a part of in my entire life. And for some reason in tennis, you can work for this, coach this, do this, be on a player board where you have influence and you're currently coaching someone while it's so insane that the stuff that we accept, that if we leave our little tennis bubble is just Looney Tunes. Like it's absurd. Listen, solutions are easier than problems. But until that gets talked about, I just have no faith. I feel like we've been saying, "Oh yeah, let's talk about that next year. We got a lot going on," and I feel like that has been the conversation for 30 or 40 years, and it's just too much. Seeing these athletes and how great they are, and how physical the sport is, and how mentally isolating it is. I just hope we don't get to the point where it's so full and there's so many expectations on players that it just explodes. Like also like the quickest solution, then you get the arguments where, the players that are 80, 70, 80, 90 in the world, they need those paychecks and they need those points at the end of the year. Great. Why don't we have a wraparound tour where the last 6 weeks of the season are only 250s? And you can choose to play those. Carlos Alcaraz doesn't need to play 250s. So he can actually make that choice where right now we have the thing where the best players who play the most matches go the longest, which is I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me, but that was a side tangent. I've taken up too much of our friend Kim's time. Kim, before you go, tell us about your new venture, Prestige Tennis Retreats. Where can people go? Tell us a little bit about what you got going on.
Yeah, we've been working on it with the team with my agency that I work with, and we got approached by a company that does a similar thing in squash. Reached out and we've been brainstorming and putting together the Prestige Tennis Retreats. We're starting the first one in Indian Wells from March 12th till the 17th in 2025. The idea is to have a professional, still fun but intense kind of tennis. A few days where in the morning you get to hit tennis balls with former Grand Slam champions. I'm going to be a part of it. I think in Indian Wells it's going to be with the Bryan brothers. I think you're going to be at the US Open next year. So still a long way ahead, but we're going to play tennis. We're going to have some good coaches a part of it as well, where people get the insight of some professional coaches and their thought process and learn, and then combine that to be in a beautiful city or beautiful tennis place, watching professional tennis, and do it with a fun group of people. So that's happening next year, but people can start signing up.
Everyone sign up because for those of you that have been out to Palm Springs, there aren't many better places in mid-March than is out there. Bob and Mike are as far as clinics and pro-ams and stuff, I don't know if there's anyone better about learning from and the techniques and the whole thing. Kim is just always a great time. So check it out, prestigetennisretreats.com. Kim, I think this thing's going to blow up. If you're a tennis fan and a tennis player and a fellow tennis nerd, playing with former number ones and Grand Slam champions in the morning, maybe watching a little tennis in the afternoons out at Indian Wells sounds like a pretty good time to me. This thing's going to take off. So get on the list now so that you're not crying in your Cheerios when it works and you're not on the list because you weren't an early adopter. Kim, thanks for your time. We love you. Thanks for your analysis. There's no one better in the game, and I hope we can keep doing these Grand Slam recaps.
Thank you, Andy.
Cheers, Kimmy. All right, producer Mike, I got to tell you, a lot of tennis talk the last couple of weeks. This has been fun though. Kim makes it so easy.
Yeah.
She's just the best.
She's the best.
Yeah, she's the best. And I love that the goal of this show is just to kind of have a conversation. And she's so good at analysis without feeling scripted. Yeah. I think she's just a savant. She's one of the best people.
I like that with this format for her, she can go off and really tell you how she feels with patience.
Yes.
Because the conversation with her is exactly what, when the mic's off, that's exactly the same thing you're getting when the mic's on.
Totally. Yeah. This is basically like Kim and I calling each other and getting on one about something.
So cool.
Yeah. She's the best. Anyways, hey, thanks for watching Served wherever you're watching it. Maybe it's YouTube. Maybe you're listening on Apple or Spotify. We appreciate you. Trying to put together a show for next week. I've put out I want to do a show the business of the US Open is so massive and the experience is so unique now. It's bigger than it's just crazy. So I'm trying to find some interesting stories. Having Kim on is great. Having players on is great. We also, I'd like to think of us as stewards of storytelling with the stories you don't normally get around tennis. So hopefully we can make that happen. We have some texts in. If not, then forget I fucking said anything. Thank you for watching and listening to Served.